Chapter 600, 9 Heavens God-Sealing Array, 1. Azenvel. Siamikron M Divine Realm, 100,000 mountains on a long wooden table on the island. The soup base of the hot pot kept boiling under the burning flames, and waves of fragrance floated out from it. As the fragrance entered their noses, everyone present felt that the flow of true essence in their bodies had become much smoother. Just the smell alone could cause such an effect. At this moment, everyone was staring at the hot pot on the table. Everyone, don't be anxious. Xiao Changtian was sitting in the middle of the crowd, holding a spoon in his hand as he helped everyone scoop the soup and put the meat in. Lin Changfeng saw Xiao Changshan's expression and understood why he was so respected by everyone. Senior's state of mind was not something he could compare to. He was strong, but he did not put on airs. He was gentle to others and even did these things himself. If he had such a state of mind when he was young, his current achievements would probably be far more than this. Lin Changfeng sighed in his heart. When he saw Xiao Changtian helping him with the soup, he smiled and said, "Senior, how can I trouble you? I'll do it myself." Xiao Changtian nodded after hearing Lin Changfeng's words. "Okay, I'll put the spoon here. You can help yourself." Xiao Changtian sighed. This newcomer was really good. He was nothing like the others. He was so lazy that every time he scooped rice and soup, he couldn't pick up the spoon or the chopsticks. All kinds of excuses made him have no choice but to do it himself. He had no choice. After all, he had promised to provide food and accommodation. After Xiao Changtian put down the spoon, Lin Changfeng was about to scoop the soup himself. He saw that everyone present was looking at him in shock. Diwu Jing secretly gave him a thumbs up. What had he done? Lin Changfeng could not react when he felt everyone's gaze. Then he immediately understood as soon as he held the spoon. I was too careless, too careless. He had actually forgotten that the spoons and utensils used by Senior were at least top-grade immortal artifacts. With the strength of the others, there was no way they could take them down. How could he do it with his little strength? Lin Changfeng held the spoon in his hand and used all the true essence in his body, but he only made the spoon move slightly. As Lin Changfeng's face turned red, the situation became very awkward. At this moment, Xiao Changtian also noticed that Lin Changfeng had not filled his bowl for a long time. "Old man, don't be so reserved. It's fine to serve a little more." This old man must be here for the first time. He was a little shy. From his face, it was obvious that he was red. He was afraid that if he filled too much, it would give others a bad impression. If he filled too little, he would not be full. "All right, Senior." Lin Changfeng nodded at Xiao Changtian. Now, it was not a matter of whether he had more or less spoons. It was a matter of whether he could lift the spoon. With the spoon in his hand, Lin Changfeng felt like he was carrying a few mountains. Finally, after much effort, Lin Changfeng put some beef soup into his bowl. Then he sat down on the chair, panting heavily. Lin Changfeng felt that scooping soup for himself was more tiring than fighting hundreds of rounds with others. Seeing that Lin Changfeng had been flourishing for so long, Xiao Changtian said slowly, "Old man, is this enough to fill your stomach? You should eat more." The little bit of meat that this old man had was probably only enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. While speaking, Xiao Changtian also helped to scoop some from the pot. "Thank you, Senior." At this moment, Lin Changfeng also thanked Xiao Changtian. Soon, everyone began to enjoy the meat of the Qingtian demonic beasts. Especially the Hellfire, who felt great eating the food he made. After dinner, Lin Changfeng said to Xiao Changtian, "Senior, I already have an idea for this lake protection sect's grand array." At this moment, Lin Changfeng took out a blueprint from his pocket and handed it to Xiao Changtian. This diagram was the 9 Heavens God-Sealing formation that he had designed. It was made from the essence of his life. He had also fused the methods within and reached a new level. Lin Changfeng believed that as long as this array was set up, even a creation immortal could attack the island. It was not a simple matter, and there was even the danger of being killed. After all, the 9 formation cores on the array complemented each other and were ever-changing. They were both offensive and defensive. Xiao Changtian looked at the blueprints Lin Changfeng gave him. After a casual glance, he nodded at him. "No problem, well, do as you want." Xiao Changtian also knew that this old man only knew a little. He couldn't expect too much from them. There wouldn't be any powerful cultivators coming to this place. If it came, no matter how strong this array formation was, it would not be able to stop it. Lin Changfeng got Xiao Changshan's approval and said to him slowly, "Senior, what do you think about using these for the formation cores?" Lin Changfeng took a step to the side as he spoke. The huge flags that were flying behind him were revealed. However, the 9 flying flags that he had collected in the 10,000 array sky over the years were all high-grade immortal artifacts. If combined, it could even be comparable to a supreme-grade immortal artifact. Lin Changfeng was very confident in his own flying flag, but after seeing the equipment used by Xiao Changtian, he was shocked. Lin Changfeng felt that his 9 flying flags might not be able to catch Xiao Changshan's eye. However, the 9 Heavens God-sealing formation had a very high requirement for immortal artifacts. These 9 immortal artifacts had to be connected to each other. He was able to find these 9 flying flags that were connected to each other partly because he was lucky. Xiao Changtian looked at the flying flag in front of him and placed his hand under his chin. "Old man, what do you think of these 9? As he spoke, Xiao Changtian took out the 9 flags that the system had given him. It wasn't that the old man's 9 flags weren't good, but Xiao Changtian felt that the flags given by the system were useless. However, if he looked a little more awe-inspiring, it might have some deterrent effect. When Lin Changfeng saw the 9 flags, he was excited. "Senior, of course. With these 9 flags, I can guarantee that no one will be able to attack the island." The strength of the 9 Heavens God-sealing array also depended on the strength of the array immortal artifact. Lin Changfeng couldn't see through the 9 flags Xiao Changtian had taken out. However, he was sure that it was definitely above the supreme-grade immortal artifact, and they were even related. Once the 9 Heavens God-sealing array was set up, let alone the experts he knew, it was impossible for him to do so. Even the legendary power of the heavenly Tao might not be able to break him. Chapter 601:1 was played. 1. Azenvel. Siamikron M Treasure Pill Heaven, on a quiet mountain peak. In the air, a stream of light slowly swept past, and then a figure slowly landed on the mountain peak. It was Zuoxiuyuan who had escaped from Wanjintian. After arriving at Treasure Pill Heaven, Zuoxiuyuan also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, Jiang Beichen's attack had left a deep impression on him. Not only did a leaf block their attack, but it also caused damage to them. Of course, the scarier one was the young man beside Lin Changfeng. He directly plundered everything in the Immortal Emperor's ancient tomb, and from the beginning to the end, he did it as if it was light. He didn't even make a move. This trip to the ancient tomb was simply a loss for him. Not only did they not get anything, but their array sect also lost a lot of people. After this trip to the ancient tomb, the array sect could be said to have suffered a great loss. Zuoxiuyuan covered his chest with his hand and could see a long scar on his chest. He thought that he would be able to recover quickly with his own strength. He did not expect the sword chi to be so terrifying. Not only was it constantly eroding his wounds, but it was also constantly eroding his wounds. Moreover, there was a tendency for it to erode other places. He condensed his true essence in his palm and slowly stabilized the wound. Zuoxiuyuan also slowly walked forward. Arriving in front of a small pavilion, Zuoxiuyuan also saw Dan Hun Tian sitting there quietly. The moment Zuoxiuyuan arrived, the Pill Soul Sky seemed to have sensed something. He opened his eyes and stood up from his seat. He walked in front of Zuoxiuyuan and saw the injuries on his body. He then slowly said to him, "Brother Zuo, what did you encounter? How did it end up like this?" Zuoxiuyuan looked at the Pill Soul Sky in front of him and said angrily, "Don't mention it. Brother Dan, I'll have to trouble you to take a look at my injuries." At this time, Zuoxiuyuan also showed his wound to the Pill Soul Sky to check. The Pill Soul Heaven was also shocked when he saw the injury on Zuoxiuyuan's chest. Could it be that some peerless swordsman had appeared in the human realm upon heavens? "Brother Zuo, who did this sword chi on your body?" Zuoxiuyuan also shook his head at him when he heard Pill Soul Heaven's words. "An unknown man. I don't know much about him. Brother Dan, is there any way to cure it?" As an alchemist, the Sky of Pill Soul was definitely an expert in this field. If he couldn't do anything, Zuoxiuyuan would probably curse. When the Pill Soul Sky heard Zuoxiuyuan's words, he pondered for a moment and slowly said to him, "Brother Zuo, there is only one way now, and that is to force the sword chi to your left hand and then," at this point, Dan Huntian also pointed his right hand down, making a cutting gesture. Hearing the words of the Pill Soul Sky, Zuoxiuyuan also struggled. Since the Pill Soul Heaven said so, it seemed that his injuries were also very serious. If he cut off his left hand, he could find some natural treasures to recover. If this sword chi kept winding around his body, he would probably not have a good time in the future. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart, Zuoyuan gritted his teeth and gathered the sword aura in his body to his left hand according to the instructions of the Pill Soul Sky. "Brother Dan, sorry to trouble you." At this time, Zuoxiuyuan also said to the Pill Soul Sky. Zuoxiuyuan's voice fell. Dan Hun Tian also did not have any hesitation. The true essence in his hand gathered into his palm and slashed across Wuxia Yuan's left shoulder like a sharp blade. Whoosh! Wuxia Yuan's left arm was directly cut off by the Pill Soul Sky. After doing all this, Dan Hun Tian also brought Wuxia Yuan to the chair in the pavilion. After pouring a cup of tea for Wuxia Yuan, Dan Hun Tian also slowly said to him, "Brother Zhua, do you have any plans for revenge?" Wuxia Yuan took the tea from the Pill Soul Sky. After taking a sip, he clenched his fists. "If I don't take revenge, how can I, Wuxia Yuan, establish myself in the human realm upon heavens in the future? Brother Dan, please help me." After hearing Wuxia Yuan's words, the Pill Soul Heaven also smiled. At this moment, an alchemy pavilion disciple slowly walked in from outside. After saying a few words in Dan Hun Tian's ear, Dan Hun Tian slowly said to Wuxia Yuan, "Brother Zhua, I will definitely help you with this. However, how about we be friends first?" Wuxia Yuan did not say anything when he heard what the Pill Soul Sky said. Then a figure in red slowly appeared in his eyes. "Hongyi." Seeing this figure, Wuxia Yuan also stood up from his seat and said slowly, "Wasn't the person standing in front of him the red-robed woman who had entered the ancient tomb with him?" At this moment, Dan Hun Tian also smiled at him and said, "Brother Zhua, let me introduce you. This is my granddaughter Hongyi." "What? Have you met?" The red-robed woman slowly walked up to him as soon as he finished speaking. "Grandpa." Wuxia Yuan looked at the woman in red and the sky of Pill Soul with a slightly stunned expression. In his memory, the woman in red should have died under Jiang Beichen's sword aura. Also, this Pill Soul Heaven actually raised his granddaughter in the Purple Pill sect. This was still somewhat beyond his expectations. The lady in red didn't die under the sword chi. It's really worth celebrating. At this time, Wuxia Yuan also slowly said to the woman in red. He could also feel that the red-dressed woman had the same sword chi as him. "Take it and eat it." At this moment, the Pill Soul Heaven also gave the red-robed woman a pill. The wounds on his body were also slowly dissipating. "Brother Dan, what do you mean?" Wuxia Yuan was a little confused now and felt that something was wrong. Didn't this Pill Soul Heaven just tell him that he wanted to cut off his arm? Why was it solved by a pill from his granddaughter now? Wuxia Yuan could smell a storm brewing. He seemed to have been played. At this time, Dan Hun Tian also slowly said to Wuxia Yuan, "Brother Zhua, actually when Zuoluyun died, I had asked Hongyi to monitor you. It just so happened that we encountered the immortal emperor's tomb, so we let her explore it. And the young man you met has been against me for some time. In that case we have a common enemy." Wuxia Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard the words of the Pill Soul Heaven as he slowly said to him, "That's right. Don't worry, after you die, I will avenge you." Dan Hun Tian also nodded at this time and then came to Wuxia Yuan. Even though Wuxia Yuan was already prepared, he was still pierced through the abdomen by Pill Soul Heaven's palm. "Brother Dan, do you think an armless array master is still an array master?" Chapter 602, You Want to Become His Woman, 1. Azenvel. Xiaomicron bowed in heaven. Next to the small pavilion, Dan Hun Tian's palm slowly took out from Wuxia Yuan's abdomen. Wuxia Yuan, who was in front of him, also fell heavily to the ground. He opened his eyes, looking like he had died with grievances. At this moment, the woman in red slowly walked to the side of the sky of Pill Soul. Looking at the dead Wuxia Yuan on the ground, he slowly said to the sky of Pill Soul, "Grandpa, what should we do next? No matter what, the grudge between us and that young man is getting bigger and bigger." Hearing the woman in red's words, the sky of Pill Soul's face darkened as well. He looked up in the direction of the Saint Spirit sky. "Next, grandfather will use the body of the left Shuyuan to break through. During this period of time, I cannot be disturbed by anyone. So, he'll have to rely on you for this period of time." "Relying on me?" When the red-clothed woman heard the words of the Pill Soul Heaven, she was also somewhat stunned. "That's right. With Grandpa's current strength, the chances of defeating him are not very high. You should also know that this level of battle is not good. If you don't do well, the entire Pill Pavilion might be wiped out. Therefore, before I have absolute confidence, I still have to rely on you to go up." When the red-clothed woman heard Pill Soul Heaven's words, her heart also experienced some ups and downs. Ever since she was young, she had really never seen the Pill Soul Heaven so solemn. It seemed that the young man had given his grandfather a lot of pressure. "Grandpa, how strong is that young man?" At this moment, the woman in red slowly asked the Pill Soul Sky. When the Pill Soul Heaven heard the woman in red, it turned around and walked toward her. "Based on the information that grandfather has, there should be a few immortal emperors. They might even have reached the peak of the Immortal Emperor realm. Immortal Emperor peak stage? Hearing the words of the Pill Soul Sky, the red-robed woman did not immediately digest it. Immortal Emperor peak stage, no wonder even grandfather was so cautious. That person probably didn't use his full strength in Wanjin heaven. Otherwise he might have already. So, now you know what kind of difficulties our Pill Pavilion is facing. Pill Soul Sky looked at the red-clothed woman's stunned expression and continued to speak to her. Grandpa, what do you want me to do? At this moment, the woman in red slowly said to the Pill Soul Sky. At this time, Pill Soul Heaven also sighed. Grandfather doesn't have high expectations for you. Go to that divine realm and be by his side. Grandpa, do you want me to monitor him? But my strength, the red-robed woman asked after hearing the words of the Pill Soul Sky. The red-robed woman felt that it was impossible to monitor a peak imperial immortal. The Pill Soul Heaven shook its head when it heard the woman in red. No, with your strength, once you get close to him, you will definitely be discovered immediately, and once there is malice, I'm afraid they will immediately turn into ashes. So, on the contrary, you have to take the initiative to approach him. Don't think about dealing with him. Instead, please him, make him trust you, and finally make yourself his woman. In this case, our Pill Pavilion will have a way out in the future. At this moment, Pill Soul Heaven also spoke to the red-robed woman earnestly. Hearing the words of the Pill Soul Sky, the red-clothed woman's body trembled. Just as she was about to say something, Dan Hun Tian continued, Hongyi, Grandpa knows that this matter is a little unfair to you. However, isn't it an honor to be a woman at the peak of the Imperial Immortal stage? The red-robed woman fell silent for a moment when she heard the Sky of Pill Soul's words. Then she continued, Grandpa, will that person take a fancy to me? As she spoke, the woman in red was not confident. Since the other party was an immortal emperor, he must have seen countless women. Why would he like a weak woman like her? Hongyi, he will. He will take a fancy to you. Otherwise, how do you think you survived until now? At this moment, the Pill Soul Sky also said slowly to the woman in red. The red-robed woman also thought of something when she heard the Sky of Pill Soul's words. Grandpa, when you were in Wanjin Tian, that person deliberately let me live, but he wasn't the one who attacked me. If it wasn't him, then at least it's related to him, right? At least without his permission would the others have acted? Hongyi, you only need to believe in yourself. Besides, Grandpa has prepared some methods for you. Grandpa believes that you can succeed. If it really doesn't work, take this thing. Perhaps you can use it. At this moment, Dan Hun Tian took out a jade bottle from his bosom and slowly handed it to the woman in red. The red-robed woman was also stunned when she saw the Pill Soul Sky handed her. Joyous Unification Powder. Don't worry, Hongyi. This was personally refined by grandfather. Even an immortal emperor would be unable to stop after consuming it. The red-clothed woman nodded after keeping the jade bottle from the Pill Soul Sky into her interspatial ring. Okay, Grandpa. I'll try my best. Good granddaughter, hurry up and go. Under the persuasion of the Pill Soul Sky, the red-robed woman turned into a stream of light and flew toward the Saint Spirit Sky. After the lady in red left, a figure slowly appeared beside Pill Soul Heaven. Have you done what you ordered? Pavilion Master, everything has been arranged for young Mississippi. If nothing unexpected happens, young Miss will definitely be able to marry that person. Hearing the guard's report, Dan Hun Tian muttered. Very good. Tell them that I'm going to be in seclusion for the next period of time. Don't come to me if there's nothing. As soon as he finished speaking, Dan Hun also puts Wuxia Yuan's corpse into his space ring. Together with the guard, their figures disappeared from where they were. At the same time, in the 10,000 mountains at this moment, Lin Changfeng was very excited. After a few days of hard work, he finally completed the 9 Heavens God Sealing Array. With Xiao Changshan's 9 flags, this 9 Heavens God Sealing formation was the strongest formation he had ever built in his life. At this moment, Lin Changfeng also called Xiao Changtian over. Senior, are you satisfied with this formation? Lin Changfeng pointed at the formation and said to Xiao Changtian. Seeing the flags on the island, Xiao Changtian knew that the old man had finished building the formation. However, the system still had the final say. While he was thinking about this, he also said slowly in his mind, System, are you satisfied with this sect protection array? Ding dong. The host has completed the mission. Reward, 100 ways of medicine, 1 herb furnace. Chapter 603, Senior looks up to a high mountain, 1. Zenvel. Siamikron M Divine Realm, 100,000 mountains. The system's voice slowly sounded in Xiao Changshan's mind. Xiao Changtian was also delighted. Originally, he had only brought this old man here to try his luck. He didn't expect that he could pass through the array system created by using a few flags. It was really a bloody profit. As he thought about this, Xiao Changtian saw the reward on the system panel. A medicinal herb stove was just a stove used to boil Chinese medicine. Also, the system was training him to become a doctor, right? Then Xiao Changtian slowly placed the 100 methods of medicine and the medicinal herb furnace into the system's backpack. Anyway, the things given by the system were useless. They were all daily necessities. They might be able to sell them for money in the future. Then the system's voice continued to ring in Xiao Changshan's mind. A new mission for the host: collect all kinds of cultivation techniques and spiritual skills, and establish a sutra library. The system's voice slowly sounded in Xiao Changshan's mind. Xiao Changtian cursed in his heart. The missions issued by the system were really ridiculous. He was clearly just a mortal. He was lucky enough to meet an old man to build a sect protection array. Now it was getting more and more excessive. He even wanted him to build a sutra depository. Wasn't this just to make fun of him? If only the old man had cultivation techniques and spirit skills. I've already cultivated long ago. Why would I submit to your pressure? After cursing in his heart for a while, Xiao Changtian also walked towards the inner part of the island. No, I can't indulge this stupid system too much. Lin Changfeng was also confused when he saw Xiao Changtian leave without saying anything. Could it be that Senior is not satisfied with the 9 heavens god ceiling formation that I have built? Lin Changfeng scratched the back of his head and saw that the array in his arms had been completely resolved. He had comprehended it in an instant. Senior must have been afraid that he would be proud, so he didn't say anything. After all, there were still many things that he had not learned in this book. Must be like this. He had to study it well and strive to make the 9 heavens god ceiling formation reach the level that Senior was satisfied with as soon as possible. With that thought in mind, Lin Changfeng walked towards his residence. Senior's cultivation was so profound, but he still didn't give up on advancing. In this god world where spiritual energy was thin, the mortal world tempered one's heart. With his immortal king cultivation base, if he didn't work hard, he would be chased away by his senior in the future. He would really have no face to live on. At the same time, in a small town outside the Shirwan mountain, there was some blood on the flower fairy's chest, and Cui Er, who was beside her, was supporting her. The two women looked at the black figures in the air with cold expressions. Palace Master, do you really have to be so heartless? The flower fairy looked at an old woman in the air and said slowly. The old woman was wearing a golden crown and holding a walking stick in her hand. Strangely, there was a wreath attached to the head of the walking stick. When the old woman heard the flower fairy's words, she smiled at her and said, "Look at you. Why are you so disobedient with such a face? Previously, when First Elder and the others came to look for you, it was fine if you didn't agree. I'm asking you to find the man you like now. Can't you do this? Furthermore, it's a matchmaker from the human realm upon heavens. Don't be so shameless." Although the old woman was old, her words carried a hint of resentment. At the same time, he looked at the black shadow in front of him with reverence. Previously, the flower fairy had refused to form a marriage alliance with other factions. He also planned to let it go. He didn't expect that a fierce person would suddenly appear in the past few days, claiming to be from the legendary human realm upon heavens. He really didn't care if this person was the palace master of the flower fairy palace who came from the human realm upon heavens. What he was concerned about was that the other party was strong and his pill refinement technique was even more divine. Just by casually giving them a few medicinal pills, their cultivation would rise. The other party's condition for providing them with pills was very simple. He wanted the flower fairy to get in touch with Xiao Changtian. The flower fairy heard the words of the Hua Celestial Palace Lord and shouted coldly, "Palace Master sincerely wants me to get in touch with Senior, so I'm naturally very grateful. But if you want me to humiliate Senior, I'm sorry, I really can't do it." The Palace Lord of the Flower Fairy Palace was also a little angry after hearing the Flower Fairy's words. "It's really a waste for the sect to nurture you all these years. If I were a few decades younger, how could I?" Before the Palace Master of Hua Fairy Palace could finish her sentence, she saw the black shadow in front of her raise her arm. She obediently shut her mouth. "Alright, why are you talking so much nonsense?" As he spoke, the black shadow waved his hand, and a huge cage appeared in the air. The people locked in the cage were all people more or less related to the Flower Fairy. "If you don't want them to die, take this pill." As soon as he finished speaking, the black shadow waved his hand and a jade bottle landed in front of the Flower Fairy. Seeing the person in the cage, the flower fairy and Chuer were shocked. Before he could say anything, he heard the black shadow's voice continue. And her. After the black shadow's voice fell in her ears, Chuer's figure involuntarily flew towards the cage. Miss Chuer. The flower fairy looked at Chuer in the air and felt helpless. You only need to make a choice. Are you convinced or not? The black shadow's cold voice rang in the flower fairy's ears. The flower fairy struggled for a moment and slowly picked up the jade bottle on the ground. Miss, no, don't. Chuer was locked in the cage. Her hands grabbed the iron bars of the cage and shook her head at the flower fairy. Looking at the people in the cage, a trace of tears fell from the corner of Fairy Hua's mouth. Then he took the pill that the black shadow had given him. After consuming it, the flower fairy's eyes flashed with a purple light. Very good. The black shadow waved his hand, and the cage beside him disappeared. Then he arrived in front of the flower fairy and slowly said to her, From now on, I, Su Tian, am your master. Now follow my instructions. While the flower fairy was being controlled by Su Tian, a woman slowly stood in the divine world. It was the red-robed woman who had rushed from treasure pill heaven to the divine world. The red-clothed lattice eyes swept across the land below as she muttered, That young man is a peerless expert. It was right for me to give myself to him. It should be there. After repeating the words a few times, the red-robed woman also flew towards the 100,000 mountains where Xiao Changtian was. Chapter 604. Indeed, I can't hide anything from Senior. Box novel. CM The Holy Spirit Fruit does no divine realm, 100,000 mountain lake. Xiao Changtian was resting on a rocking chair. However, there was a self-made umbrella above him. It was simply too comfortable. At this moment, the great sun immortal also slowly came to his side. Senior, Miss Lung and the others want to see you. Xiao Changtian stood up from his rocking chair after hearing the words of the great sun immortal. Miss Lung and the others are here. Let's go and meet them. Speaking of which, he was able to complete the missions given by the system these few times. It was all thanks to the information given to him by the cold maidens. Otherwise he might not be able to complete anything by relying on a salted fish like himself. Therefore, when Xiao Changtian heard that Lung Xiaoxiao and the others had arrived, he also wanted to entertain them. Soon Xiao Changtian saw Lung Xiaoxiao and Lung Mei who were coming towards him. Lung Xiaoxiao came to Xiao Changshan's side and handed him the basket in her hand. Senior, this is the Holy Spirit fruit we just picked. I hope you like it. Seeing Lung Xiaoxiao handing him the basket, Xiao Changtian smiled at them and said, Miss Lung, just come. Why are you so polite? This is a walnut? Xiao Changtian saw the things in the basket and blurted out. Walnut? What walnuts? Senior, this is the Holy Spirit fruit. Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, Lung Mei also went over at this time. He pointed at the fruits in the basket and said to Xiao Changtian, What? Does Senior like walnuts? Although she had never heard of walnuts, Lung Mei asked Xiao Changtian with a smile. I like it. Walnuts are good. They nourish the brain. At this moment, Xiao Changtian also pointed at Lung Xiaoxiao and said with a smile. Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, Lung Xiaoxiao and Lung Mei looked at each other. As expected, I can't hide anything from Senior. This Holy Spirit fruit really has such an effect. While speaking, Lung Mei also imitated Xiao Changtian and pointed at his own head. The Holy Spirit fruit was a product of the spirit race, so its greatest effect was naturally to nourish the soul. Seeing Lung Mei's appearance, Xiao Changtian also smiled foolishly. How could he not know this? In his previous life, in order to let knowledge know him, he had to learn to understand him. He had eaten countless walnuts. The result was that I was still me and knowledge was still knowledge. He might know me, but I definitely didn't know him. However, in the cultivation world, walnuts had a different name. They were called Holy Spirit fruits. Then, under Xiao Changshan's lead, Lung Xiaoxiao and the others also came to the main hall. Sitting beside Lung Xiaoxiao and the others, Xiao Changtian said to them, I have to thank the two ladies for providing me with so much information. Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, Lung Xiaoxiao also looked flattered. They had come today mainly to thank Xiao Changtian for saving their spiritual race, especially when Zuoluyun attacked the spirit race. If Xiao Changtian didn't arrive in time, the spirit race might have ceased to exist. Lung Xiaoxiao quickly said to Xiao Changtian, Senior, you must be joking. With your ability, it would definitely be easy for you to get that information. We should thank Senior instead. Hearing Lung Xiaoxiao's words, Xiao Changshan's mouth twitched. Miss Lung, you must be joking. If he could really get this easily, he wouldn't have come to this poor village. However, Miss Lung's mouth knew how to speak. Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, Leng Xiaoxiao knew that Xiao Changtian was cultivating his heart in the mortal world, so she didn't say anything. Then he slowly said to Xiao Chang'an, "Senior, when we came here, we saw that the small town outside was holding a poetry competition. I wonder if Senior is interested in participating?" Leng Xiaoxiao had also paid attention when she arrived. The small town outside the 100,000 Mountains was holding a poetry competition. Most of the participants were mortals, so they thought that it might help Xiao Changshan's cultivation. Leng Xiaoxiao also brought it up. Hearing Leng Xiaoxiao's words, Xiao Changtian pondered for a while and then said to Leng Xiaoxiao and the others, "Well, in that case, let's go over and take a look." He did not want to do the mission given by the system for the time being. Since he had nothing to do on the island and someone wanted to invite him, he might as well go and take a look. At the same time, outside the 100,000 Mountains, the woman in red slowly landed on a mountain peak and looked at the 100,000 Mountains in front of her. He clenched his fists tightly, clearly still feeling a little nervous. "Hongyi, you can do it. That young man is a peerless expert. It's not a loss to be with him." As Hongyi spoke, a black shadow slowly walked out from the surroundings. It was Su Tian who had controlled the flower fairy earlier. After Su Tian walked out, he slowly said to the woman in red, "Miss, this subordinate has been waiting here for a long time." Hearing a voice behind her, the red-clothed woman turned around abruptly. "Su Tian, why are you here? Wasn't this person in front of him his grandfather's bodyguard?" When Su Tian heard the woman in red's words, he slowly said to her, "Lord Dan asked this subordinate to come here to wait for Miss. This is what Lord gave to Miss, please take a look." As he spoke, Su Tian also handed a red invitation card to the red-robed woman. The red-clothed woman took it from Su Tian's hands. After flipping it open and examining it, she muttered to herself, "Poetry competition?" After keeping the red invitation, the red-clothed lady slowly said to Su Tian, "Grandfather, do you have any other instructions?" Lord Dan said that Miss only needs to act according to the plan. Su Tian slowly replied after hearing the woman in red's words. The red-robed woman's face turned red as she waved her hand at Su Tian. "All right, I got it." Su Tian's figure slowly disappeared from her sight after the red-clothed woman finished speaking. Then, the woman in red turned into a stream of light and slowly flew toward the small town outside the 100,000 Mountains. At the same time, in the small town outside the 100,000 Mountains at this moment, there were already lanterns and streamers around the unique stream in the town. "Do you know that the Flower Fairy is going to hold a poetry competition? This is a rare blessing competition. Hurry up." When the mortals and cultivators in the town heard that the Flower Fairy was going to hold a poetry meeting, they were all excited. After all, those who lived here were either cultivators with low cultivation or mortals. They had to endure the harassment of the ferocious beasts in the 100,000 Mountains all year round. They were very excited about these prayer meetings, poetry meetings, and so on. Perhaps he would be lucky enough to have an expert to protect him and live a few more years here. Chapter 605. However, you're still a little less than Miesenville. Siam 1, Divine Realm, a small town outside the 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian and Leng Xiaoxiao were walking in the town. Xiao Changtian sighed when he saw how lively the town was. When he first came here a while ago, this town was also holding some kind of blessing meeting. From the looks of it, this poetry competition should be about the same. If there was anything different, it would be that there were more people participating this time. Soon Xiao Changtian and the others arrived at the stream. "Senior, are you interested in participating?" Leng Mei asked Xiao Changtian as she looked around with her big eyes. "Let's just take a look." Xiao Changtian responded to Leng Mei's words. He saw the colorful lanterns on both sides of the stream and the words on the banners. In the cultivation world, martial arts were valued over literature. The cultural level of these poems was enough for him to crush them by reciting 300 Tang poems when he was young. He was just here to take a look. If he really went up to compete with them, wouldn't it be a blow to his reputation? At this moment, a pleasant voice slowly sounded in Xiao Changshan's ears. "Seeing how refined Mr. is Mr. also here to participate in the poetry competition?" Hearing this voice, Xiao Changtian also looked to his side. He saw a woman in red with an enchanting figure looking at him with a smile. Suddenly being hit on by a beautiful woman, Xiao Changtian smiled politely at her. "I just came to take a look." Before coming, the red-clothed woman had already dressed up meticulously. She had specially dressed herself up to be more seductive and sexy. He thought that he could attract Xiao Changshan's attention. After all, he had already investigated. This senior was pretending to be a young man. Wasn't he just at the age where he was full of vigor? Why didn't he react at all? He only said one sentence and then stopped. Seeing that Xiao Changtian didn't continue to speak, the woman in red continued, I have just arrived here and have been very interested in these poems since I was young. I'm new here. I wonder if I can travel with you. Xiao Changtian hesitated for a moment when he heard the woman in red's words. He then slowly said to her, Okay, all right. Looking at the lady in red, Xiao Changtian recalled the time when he first came here. It was also thanks to the flower fairy's help that they were able to find the 100,000 mountains. Now that this woman had just arrived, he would help her if he could. Then Xiao Changtian said to Leng Xiaoxiao and Leng Lingyu, Miss Leng, you won't mind, right? After Xiao Changtian spoke to Leng Xiaoxiao and the others, the red-robed woman realized that Leng Xiaoxiao and the others were with Xiao Changtian. Leng Xiaoxiao of the spiritual race Leng Mei. When the red-robed woman saw Leng Xiaoxiao and the other two, she also muttered in her heart. No wonder Senior didn't care so much about his appearance. Leng Xiaoxiao and the others were indeed comparable to him. However, that was all. When Leng Xiaoxiao and the others heard this, they also said to Xiao Changtian, he said, We listened to the senior's call. Leng Xiaoxiao had noticed the woman in red the moment she appeared. The woman in red gave her a feeling of extreme danger. At least in terms of cultivation he was definitely stronger than him. Leng Xiaoxiao didn't understand why such a beautiful expert would approach them. However, with Senior by his side, there should be nothing to worry about. Leng Mei looked at the red-robed woman and spoke with a hint of jealousy. All right then. Then let's go over there and take a look. At this moment there were many people and some of them could not see clearly. Xiao Changtian also pointed to a higher viewing platform. He said to the three women beside him. Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, Leng Xiaoxiao and the woman in red nodded immediately. Then he followed behind Xiao Changtian. When the lady in red walked to Leng Mei's side, she also said to her slowly, Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. But there are some things that you can't touch. In terms of looks and figure, you're not bad, but you're still a little lacking compared to me. Leng Mei also reacted after receiving the red-clothed lattice voice transmission. It turned out that this person was here to compete with him for a senior. Immediately, he became angry and transmitted a message to the red-clothed woman. Who are you? You must have ill intentions for suddenly approaching Senior. Do you think Senior will take a fancy to you? Although Leng Mei admitted that this red-clothed woman's figure was indeed not bad. However, who was Senior? His strength was so profound. What kind of woman had he not seen before? How could he take a fancy to her? When the red-clothed woman received Leng Mei's voice transmission, she also responded fiercely to her. You are not qualified to know who I am. The more you know, the more trouble you will bring upon yourself. Leng Xiaoxiao was beside them. She didn't know what had happened between them. However, when he saw the way they looked at each other, he knew that nothing good was going to happen. He then said to the two of them, All right, if you don't leave now, you won't be able to keep up with Senior. Hearing Leng Xiaoxiao's words, the red-robed woman and Leng Mei saw Xiao Changtian who had already walked a distance away. They immediately chased after each other. Leng Xiaoxiao felt a headache coming on. Soon Xiao Changtian, Leng Xiaoxiao and the others also arrived on the platform. Then Xiao Changtian and the others saw a flower boat slowly swimming past the stream. Seeing this flower boat, Xiao Changtian also muttered in his heart. Wasn't this the flower fairy's boat from last time? Could it be that this poetry competition was organized by the flower fairy? Last time he was inexplicably chosen. Could it be that this time? As Xiao Changtian thought about this, a wreath fell on his body. Then a clear female voice came from the boat. Those who have received the wreath, please come to the ship and write a poem. Those who can obtain the approval of the fairy will receive blessings. Xiao Changtian looked at the wreath in his hand and was dumbfounded. No way, what a coincidence. However, he knew the flower fairy, and it seemed like he hadn't seen her for a long time. Since he had been chosen, he would go and meet him. Then Xiao Changtian walked towards the boat. Someone in the crowd seemed to have recognized him. Wow, why is it him again? I remember that he was chosen by the fairy last time. Could this person be the legendary European king? Other than being a little handsome, how can I not compare to him? As expected, handsome people are also very lucky. Xiao Changtian also came to the boat amidst the envious voices. In the cabin, the flower fairy's eyes flashed with purple light. Chapter 606. You're a heartless man. 1. Zenvel. CM Divine Realm, a small town outside the 100,000 mountains. Xiao Changtian, escorted by a few maids, slowly came to the boat. Young master, please. A maid pointed at the cabin and said to Xiao Changtian. Xiao Changtian nodded at the maid. Then he walked into the cabin. Just like the last time he saw the flower fairy, Xiao Changtian also saw the flower fairy sitting in the cabin, playing the zither. Seeing the flower fairy, Xiao Changtian said to her slowly, "Flower fairy, long time no see." The flower fairy also replied, "That's right, I didn't expect to see young master here again." While speaking, the fairy slowly walked to Xiao Changtian. "Xiao Changtian, do you know what you told me after we left the 100,000 mountains? We can meet soon, but if I didn't hold this poetry competition today, would you have abandoned me?" At this moment, the flower fairy was also glaring at Xiao Changtian like a shrew. "Flower fairy, I've indeed been too busy recently. If I cause you any trouble, I don't need you to be so hypocritical." Before Xiao Changtian could finish his words, the flower fairy in front of him waved her sleeves and said fiercely to him, "Who do you think you are? Aren't you just good at playing the piano and raising a few divine beasts? I'm telling you, in my eyes, these are nothing, you're a heartless man." Xiao Changtian forced a smile on his face. "Flower fairy, are you misunderstanding something?" He could understand why this flower girl said she knew how to play the piano. However, how could he not know how many divine beasts he had raised? Wasn't this nonsense? If I had raised a few divine beasts, I wouldn't have come to such a remote village like the 100,000 mountains. Also, how did I become a heartless man? I don't seem to have any feelings for you, right? Xiao Changtian seriously suspected that the flower fairy had been provoked by something. The flower fairy heard Xiao Changshan's words and also laughed out loud. "Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Let me tell you, a heartless man like you will never have a woman who will fall for you." Hearing the flower fairy's words, Xiao Changtian was furious. Just as he was about to do something, he saw a figure pass by him. Then a crisp sound slowly sounded in the cabin. "I don't think anyone would like a shrew like you." At this time, Leng Mei had unknowingly arrived in front of Xiao Changtian. He pointed at the flower fairy in front of him and said slowly. Leng Mei's slap also directly sent the veil on the flower fairy's face flying. The flower fairy covered her burning face and looked at Leng Mei in front of her. She said to her coldly, "Who are you? Who let you up here? Men chase her out. Where did you all go?" After Leng Mei heard the flower fairy's words, she also responded slowly. "There's no need to shout. Those people have already been dealt with. Let me tell you, there are many women who fancy Senior. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have a little bit of charm. In terms of beauty, you're far inferior to me." At this moment, Leng Mei also learned what the red-clothed woman had said to her previously. At this moment, Leng Mei turned to Xiao Changtian and said slowly, "Senior, you won't mind me doing this, right?" Seeing Leng Mei sticking out her tongue at him, Xiao Changtian waved his hand at her. "Thank you so much." Xiao Changtian had mixed feelings. The flower fairy was originally a good girl. How did it suddenly become like this? Could this be the legendary love turning into hate? But that was not right. He was just a mortal. Why would the other party take a fancy to him? When the flower fairy heard Leng Mei's words, she looked at her and said slowly, "Leng Mei, when I was in the 100,000 mountains, I was already unhappy with you. Don't you have your own good looks that are better than mine?" When Leng Mei heard the flower fairy's words, he immediately reacted in his heart. Looking at Xiao Changtian beside her, her pretty face blushed. The flower fairy's voice continued to slowly travel over. "See, you're hesitating yourself. You've taken a fancy to too many of Senior's women. What a joke. Xiao Changtian, if you have the ability, don't stand behind a woman." Then the flower fairy turned her head and provoked Xiao Changtian. When Leng Mei heard the flower fairy's words, she also stomped her foot. Hey Miss Leng, I know. You don't have to say it." Before Leng Mei could finish her words, Xiao Changtian spoke to her slowly. Then he walked to the flower fairy's words and slowly said to her, "Flower fairy, I think there's nothing more to say between us." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Changtian also wanted to bring Leng Mei out. He had thought that he would be quite happy with this poem competition today. He did not expect to encounter such a thing. He did not know what this flower girl had experienced. It was better for him to let her calm down. Leng Mei looked at Xiao Changtian beside him and felt a little nervous. It turned out that Senior had always known about his love for him. The Senior didn't reject him just now. Did that mean that he still had a chance? Thinking of this, Leng Mei felt a burst of sweetness in her heart. At this moment, the flower fairy saw Xiao Changtian wanting to leave with Leng Mei. He also shouted at them, "Stop, where are you going? You injured my people and you want to leave?" As she spoke, the flower fairy also came in front of Xiao Changtian and Leng Mei, blocking their way. When Leng Mei heard the flower fairy's words, he also said to Xiao Changtian, "Senior, I didn't injure them." Xiao Changtian looked at the flower fairy in front of him and frowned. Was this flower girl going to fight to the death? Then Xiao Changtian also planned to bring Leng Mei to the other side. Seeing Xiao Changtian ignore her, the flower fairy also took out a white veil. Then he waved the white muslin in his hand and was about to attack Xiao Changtian. At the same time, a voice slowly sounded in the cabin. "Woman, sir has already given you a lot of face. Don't push your luck." As soon as she finished speaking, the woman in red slowly appeared between Xiao Changtian and the flower fairy. He held the gauze that the flower fairy wanted to use to attack Xiao Changtian, and he looked at her angrily. After all, Xiao Changtian was the man she wanted to fall in love with. How could the woman in red tolerate others humiliating Xiao Changtian? Furthermore, this woman's cultivation was so low that she was not worthy of Xiao Changtian. Chapter 607. Teach the Flower Fairy a Lesson. 1. Zenvel. CM in the cabin of a flower boat in a small town outside the 100,000 mountains. The flower fairy saw the woman in red who had suddenly appeared in front of her. After tugging at the white veil in his hand a few times and realizing that it did not budge, he said fiercely to the red-clothed woman, "And who are you?" "You are still not qualified to know who I am." The red-robed woman replied rudely. Then she pulled the white veil in her hand. The flower fairy staggered and almost fell to the ground. At this moment, Xiao Changtian also came to the side of the woman in red. "Thank you for your help." At the same time, Xiao Changtian looked at the flower fairy who almost fell to the ground and said to her, "Miss Hua, I really didn't expect you to become like this." The flower fairy heard Xiao Changshan's words and ignored him. He still had a smile on his face as he walked behind him. He pulled out a long sword from under his table. As soon as the long sword was drawn, a bone-piercing chill rippled in the cabin. This sword was not simple. When the woman in red saw the sword, she felt a sense of familiarity for some reason. He should have seen this sword somewhere before. However, he couldn't recall it for a while. Xiao Changtian saw the flower fairy suddenly pull out a long sword and said to her, "Miss Hua, what are you doing?" At the same time, Xiao Changtian said to Leng Mei and the woman in red beside him, "Miss Leng, Miss Hongyi, you can leave first. I'll take care of this place." Xiao Changtian was certain that the flower fairy was suffering from a serious illness. He actually pulled out a long sword to deal with them. This made it seem as if there was a great hatred between them. Moreover, there were only him and two women in this cabin. He was still alright. After receiving the system's training, he could still deal with it. However, it was unknown if Miss Leng and the lady in red had learned any self-defense skills. If he was cut down by the flower fairy, something might happen. When the flower fairy heard Xiao Changshan's words, her lips curled into a smile. "Xiao Changtian, are you scared?" "What? It's not that easy to leave. I'm going to make you stay here today to atone for your sins." Then the flower fairy raised her sword and attacked Xiao Changtian and the others. Seeing the flower fairy, Xiao Changtian also planned to go over and deal with her. However, before he could move, the woman in red charged at the flower fairy. "Sir, be careful. Leave this to me." The woman in red grabbed the flower fairy's arm and said to Xiao Changtian. Xiao Changtian was also stunned when he saw the woman in red suddenly rushing in front of him. So the lady in red was a tough woman. "Lady in red, I think it's still too dangerous. Let me do it." Although the woman in red took the initiative to attack, Xiao Changtian was still worried. How did she become a freeloader here today? The red-robed woman slowly responded to Xiao Changshan's words. "Sir, there's no need. Let me do it." Xiao Changtian shrugged his shoulders when he heard the woman in red. "Alright, why not?" Then, the woman in red and the flower fairy looked at each other and said slowly, "You want to fight with teacher? Let me tell you, you're not worthy." Hong Yi's words seemed to have angered the flower fairy. When the flower fairy heard her words, she also attacked her. "I want you dead." The woman in red saw the flower fairy brandishing her sword at her. Seizing her weakness, he raised one leg and kicked at the flower fairy's hand. With a swoosh, the long sword left the flower fairy's hand. Then the woman in red punched the flower fairy's face. Bang! The flower fairy was hit by the woman in red and flew backward. "Sir, let's go." The woman in red came to Xiao Changtian and said slowly. Xiao Changtian nodded at the woman in red. He really didn't expect this red-dressed girl to be so fierce. Then Xiao Changtian, the woman in red, and Leng Mei also left the boat. Walking out of the flower boat, the surrounding cultivators saw the red-robed woman and Leng Mei beside Xiao Changtian. Wow, how did this person go in and come out with two beauties? Could it be that fairy's blessing is to send a beautiful woman? Fairy, I also want to accept your blessing. The cultivator shouted at the boat while the cultivator beside him slowly said to him, why don't you take a look at yourself and then look at him? Do you think he's qualified to be chosen? Although that young man is a little handsome, I'm still a cultivator. Look at him. He doesn't have any ore at all. At this moment, the cultivator's envious voice slowly sounded. Soon Xiao Changtian and Leng Mei left the town. This poetry contest was too bad for them. Not long after Xiao Changtian and the others left, a few figures slowly appeared on the flower boat. It was Su Tian and the palace lord of the Flower Fairy Palace. Su Tian slowly walked into the cabin. Using his unique method, he also sensed the Flower Fairy's location. Su Tian smiled when he saw the Flower Fairy lying on the ground. According to his plan, he wanted the Flower Fairy to humiliate Xiao Changtian. It would be best to anger her and then let Hong Yi resolve it. He left a good impression on Xiao Changtian, and he was stimulated again. Su Tian felt that Hong Yi's chances of taking down Xiao Changtian should be 80 to 90%. Miss, well, wait for your good news now, Su Tian muttered. At this moment, the palace lord of the Flower Fairy Palace also came to Su Tian's side and slowly said to him, Sir, where is the Flower Fairy? This lord said that he was looking for the Flower Fairy, but he didn't see her. Su Tian pointed at a figure in the corner. Over there. The palace lord of the Flower Fairy Palace walked over and helped the Flower Fairy up from the ground. She then slowly said to Su Tian, My lord, this pig head, how could it be the Flower Fairy? That girl wouldn't have run away, right? As long as you give the order, this old woman will immediately find it for you. Su Tian looked at the Flower Fairy's face when he heard the words of the palace lord of the Flower Fairy Palace. The corner of his mouth twitched. If it weren't for the perception of the medicinal pill, he would have thought that this wasn't the Flower Fairy. Then Su Tian slowly said to the palace lord of the Flower Fairy Palace, There's no need. She is. As for why her face is like this, she was beaten. As he said that, Su Tian slowly left the cabin. Chapter 608, Senior, can I invite you to a place? 1. Zenvel. CM Divine Realm, 100,000 Mountains. After Xiao Changtian left the boat, he also stayed in an inn in the town. After staying in the inn, the woman in red saw her voice transmission jade pendant light up. After picking up the voice transmission jade pendant, the red-clothed woman also received Su Tian's voice transmission. Young Miss, the pavilion master has spoken. This is the time when that young man is at his most lonely and empty. As long as Miss takes the initiative, she will definitely succeed. Upon receiving Su Tian's voice transmission, the red-robed woman felt a wave of nervousness in her heart. Was this moment finally coming? Then the woman in red slowly replied to Su Tian, Okay, I understand. Tell Grandpa and let him rest assured. After replying, the woman in red slowly walked towards Xiao Changshan's room. Bang, bang, bang. Xiao Changtian was lying on the bed in the room when he heard a sound coming from the door. He walked to the door and opened it. When he saw the woman in red, he said to her, Lady in red, what's the matter? The red-robed woman looked at Xiao Changtian, feeling a little nervous. Senior, can I invite you to a place? Xiao Changtian slowly said to the red-clothed lady, Okay, all right. After all, he had helped her on the flower boat just now. Looking at the other party's appearance, it seemed that there was something that he needed his help with. Hearing Xiao Changshan's agreement, the red-robed woman was delighted. Next, the first step was a success. As Xiao Changtian followed the woman in red out, they soon arrived in front of a pavilion. Sir, I've always yearned for this place since I was young. This is my first time here. I wonder if we can go in together? The red-dressed woman pointed at the attic in front of her, her face slightly red, and said shyly to Xiao Changtian. Xiao Changtian heard the woman in red's words and looked at the pavilion in front of him. There were 3 big words written on the attic. Yihong Pavilion. Seeing the red-clothed lattice somewhat bashful appearance, Xiao Changtian also somewhat understood. It seemed like the red-dressed girl was just like the others, curious about the places she had never been to. The girl in red's family must have told her not to go to such a place when she was young. Therefore he was very curious about this place. He had probably brought him here because he was afraid of encountering some danger. After all, it was not convenient for a girl to come to such a place. With this thought in mind, Xiao Changtian slowly said to the woman in red, Lady in red, let's go in. Okay. Then, under Xiao Changshan's lead, the lady in red slowly entered the happy red pavilion. As soon as they entered, Xiao Changtian and the red-robed woman saw a scene of flowers, red wine, and green. At this moment an old O walked towards Xiao Changtian and the woman in red. "Dear guests, do you have any girls you like?" Xiao Changtian looked at the old woman in front of him and said slowly, "No need. We're just here to take a look." The red-robed woman looked at the woman beside them and slowly transmitted her voice to her. "Get lost." Sensing the power in the woman's words, the old woman knew that the two people in front of her were not people she could offend. He smiled and said to them, "Then I wish the two of you a happy stay here." The old woman walked to the side after she finished speaking. Soon the woman in red and Xiao Changtian arrived at a room above. After entering the room, the woman in red looked at Xiao Changtian shyly. "Lady in red, please sit." At this moment Xiao Changtian said to the woman in red, "There's actually nothing new about this place. It's better not to come here." The woman in red nodded at Xiao Changtian. Then the two of them sat at the table in silence for a while. The red-robed woman looked at Xiao Changtian beside her. He had already hinted so clearly, but why hadn't Senior taken any action yet? At this moment the woman in red touched Xiao Changshan's arm. "What's wrong, Miss Red?" Xiao Changtian drank a cup of tea from the teacup on the table and felt the touch on his arm. Xiao Changtian said slowly to the woman in red. The woman in red heard Xiao Changshan's words and was about to say something. Then she heard a series of sounds coming from outside the room. At this moment Xiao Changtian also said to her slowly, "Lady in red, I'll go take a look." It was better for him to pay more attention to this place. Seeing Xiao Changtian leave, the lady in red thought of something. He slowly took out a jade bottle from his interspatial ring. Looking at the jade bottle in her hand, the woman in red gritted her teeth. "Red shirt, you can definitely do it." With this thought in mind, the red-robed woman also looked at the teapot on the table. Seeing that Xiao Changtian wasn't paying attention to this place, he was also at the door. He immediately poured some medicinal powder into the teapot. After doing all this, the red-robed woman immediately put the jade bottle back into her ring. He looked at Xiao Changtian with a guilty conscience. At the same time Xiao Changtian came to the door. He slowly opened the door and saw Leng Mei outside. "Miss Leng?" Xiao Changtian was also surprised to see Leng Mei. Why was Miss Leng here? Leng Mei saw Xiao Changtian and smiled at him. "Senior, why are you here? Is it convenient for me to go in?" Hearing Leng Mei's words, Xiao Changtian was also stunned. Then he said to her, "Come in." Miss Leng was probably curious about this place and came here. After Leng Mei entered the room, she also saw the red-clothed woman inside. After the lady in red left the inn with Xiao Changtian, Leng Mei also noticed it at the first moment. As his competitor, Cold Charm was also very concerned about the red-dressed woman. The red-robed woman was also stunned when she saw Leng Mei who had suddenly arrived. Then, his expression turned cold as he slowly transmitted his voice to Leng Mei. "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" When Leng Mei received the red-clothed woman's voice transmission, she did not show any weakness and transmitted her voice. Seeing Leng Mei's smug look, the red-clothed woman was also a little angry. Since it had come to this, the red-clothed woman couldn't say anything. He could only take one step at a time. At this time Xiao Changtian also came to the woman in red and Leng Mei. He said to them slowly, "Miss Red, since Miss Leng is here, come with us." Letting Leng Mei mingle here alone, Xiao Changtian was also not at ease. Xiao Changtian said to the woman in red. Chapter 609:1 Didn't think the two ladies had this hobbit. 1. Zenvel. CM Divine Realm, a small town outside the 100,000 mountains. Xiao Changtian, Leng Mei and the woman in red were sitting in the room. At this moment Xiao Changtian also said to the lady in red and Leng Mei, "Ladies, it's late. Why don't we rest?" Xiao Changtian was about to get up and book another room. Seeing that Xiao Changtian was about to leave, the red-robed woman was also anxious. If this senior left, wouldn't his plan fail at the last step? As she thought about this, the red-robed woman spoke to Xiao Changtian. "Senior, please wait a moment." Xiao Changtian stopped for a moment when he heard the woman in red. Then he turned around and said to the woman in red, "Lady in red, what's the matter?" Looking at Xiao Changshan's face, the red-robed woman was also a little nervous. Then he picked up the teapot and poured a cup of water. "Senior, have a drink before you leave." Xiao Changtian smiled at the woman in red. When the red-dressed woman saw the smile on her face, she felt nervous. "Senior, could it be that he discovered something?" At this moment, the hand of the woman in red holding the teacup was also trembling. Xiao Changtian slowly walked up to the woman in red. "Miss in red, it's good to drink more water. Let's drink a cup together." "All right." Xiao Changtian was holding a teapot and pouring water. Lung Mei also seized this opportunity and walked over. This red shirt was trying to curry favor with Senior for no reason. She definitely had some plan. He couldn't let the other party get the upper hand. With this thought in mind, Lung Mei took the cup of water that Xiao Changtian handed over and directly let her drink it all. When the red-dressed lady saw Lung Mei's actions, she looked at her with a strange gaze. After Lung Mei drank a cup of water, she did not feel anything wrong. Xiao Changtian saw that the woman in red had not finished her cup. He also slowly said to her, "Miss in red, drink the water. A cup of water before you sleep is good for your body." The woman in red nodded at Xiao Changtian. At this moment, if he did not drink it, wouldn't the thing in the water be discovered? Soon, the woman in red also drank the cup in her hand. Xiao Changtian also drank the cup in his hand after seeing the woman in red drink it. "All right, Miss Red, Miss Lung, you should rest early." Xiao Changtian exchanged a few words with Lung Mei and the others, then slowly walked towards the door. It was already so late. It was not appropriate for him to stay here. If he did not do well, the reputation of this red-dressed girl and Miss Lung would be ruined by him. Soon Xiao Changtian also left the room where Lung Mei and the woman in red were. He opened a new room and walked into it. He also felt his body heat up. What was going on? Xiao Changtian felt a wave of restlessness in his body. He placed his hand on his forehead and touched it. Could it be that he had been on fire recently? With that thought in mind, Xiao Changtian quickly took out a detoxification pill from his interspatial ring. He had refined it according to the formula given by the system. Hopefully it would be of some use. Holding the pill in his hand, Xiao Changtian also picked up the water bottle on the table. Xiao Changtian also slowly went to bed to sleep after taking the detoxification pill. On the other side, in the room of Lung Mei and the woman in red. Lung Mei paced back and forth in the room, thinking about the intention of the woman in red just now. At this moment, Lung Mei also felt a burst of heat in her body. He glanced at the red-robed woman who was currently sitting cross-legged on the bed. At this moment, Lung Mei took off her coat. The red-clothed woman suppressed her own heat and spoke slowly in her heart. "Senior, why are you still not here? The medicinal effects of this pill that grandfather gave seem to be a little too strong." At the same time, the red-dressed woman's forehead was covered in sweat. After Lung Mei walked a few rounds in the room, she also felt that something was wrong with her body. Then he realized something and slowly said to the woman in red, "What did you put in the tea just now?" Upon hearing Lung Mei's voice, the red-clothed woman also realized that her plan had been seen through by Lung Mei. However, the heat in his heart was no better than Lung Mei's. Looking at Lung Mei, he also said slowly to her, "Quickly use your internal energy to suppress the effects of the medicine. Otherwise no one can save you later." Lung Mei also pointed at the red-clothed woman when she heard her words. Then a wave of heat surged into his heart. After the heat swallowed her rationality, Lung Mei slowly walked towards the bed where the red-clothed woman was. "What do you want?" The red-clothed lady looked at Lung Mei, who was walking towards her, and shouted at her. At this moment, Lung Mei had already come to the bedside. Looking at the red-clothed woman in front of her, she was about to pounce on her. Whoosh! When the red-clothed woman saw Lung Mei pouncing at her, her figure flashed and she dodged to the other side. This action of the red-dressed woman also broke her original meditation posture. The heat in her body could not be suppressed, and it directly swallowed her rationality. Ah! At this moment, Lung Mei also let out a moan. The woman in red, who had lost her mind, was entangled with Lung Mei at this moment. The two of them slept on the bed together. Not long after, the entire bed started shaking violently. At the same time, a series of sounds came from the door. After no one opened the door, Xiao Changtian slowly pushed it open. "Miss Lung, the red-dressed girl, I was feeling a little uncomfortable just now. I don't know if you can cure me, so I was planning to take the antidote." Xiao Changtian hadn't finished his words when he saw Lung Mei and the red-robed woman struggling on the bed. She quickly turned around and covered her eyes. "Do not look at evil, do not look at evil." After silently reciting it in his heart, Xiao Changtian slowly said to Lung Mei and the rest, "Miss Lung, I didn't see anything just now." "I didn't see anything. You guys continue. They'll be leaving first." While speaking, Xiao Changtian also left Lung Mei and the red-clothed woman's room. Originally, he wanted to give her some antidote pills. She didn't expect Miss Lung and the Red Spectre girls to have such a hobby. It seemed that the people in the cultivation world were quite open-minded. He was probably excited to come to this place. With this thought in mind, Xiao Changtian returned to his room. After getting rid of the erotic scene she had just seen, she fell asleep immediately. A night of silence. Chapter 610, Poison into the Water Source, 1. Divine Realm, 100,000 Mountains. The red-robed woman slowly arrived at a room in the inn. She still couldn't accept what had happened yesterday. Why did he and another woman? Due to her vexation, the first thing the red-robed woman did after waking up was to leave the happy red pavilion. At this moment, the woman in red's voice transmission jade pendant also lit up. Looking at the jade pendant on her waist, the red-robed woman also injected a trace of true essence into it. Then an old voice came from inside. Hongi, I heard that you spent last night with that young man at the happy red brothel? When the woman in red heard the voice of the Pill Soul Sky, she immediately picked up the jade pendant in her hand and said to it, Grandpa, you're out of seclusion. Last night On the other side of the jade pendant, Pill Soul Heaven heard the woman in red's hesitant expression. There was another burst of laughter. Hongi, I know you're shy, so I won't tease you. If you suffer any grievances at his place, you can tell Grandpa. Grandpa will help you teach him a lesson. Also, when are you going to bring him here to see Grandpa? At this time, Pill Soul Heaven also revealed his purpose. When the red-clothed woman heard the words of the Pill Soul Sky, she stammered, Grandpa, I might have messed things up. The woman in red's voice slowly traveled over. On the other side, Pill Soul Sky was clearly stunned for a moment. You messed up? What happened? Tell Grandpa slowly. When the red-robed woman heard Pill Soul Heaven's voice, she continued, I didn't sleep with Sir last night. No? Then who are you sleeping with? At this moment, Pill Soul Sky's voice sounded even more surprised. According to Su Tian's report, the commotion in Red Shirt's room last night was very big. When the red-robed woman heard the Sky of Pill Soul's words, she said to the Sky of Pill Soul in embarrassment, with another woman. After saying that, perhaps because she was shy, the red-dressed woman directly hung up the jade pendant. At the same time, on a quiet mountain peak in Treasure Pill Heaven. Seeing that the jade pendant in his hand had lost its light, Dan Huntian knew that he had lost contact with the woman in red. Whoosh! Dan Huntian slowly crushed the voice transmission jade pendant in his hand into pieces. At this moment, Su Tian, who was standing behind him, also knelt down in front of him when he saw his appearance. Pavilion Master, please calm down. The words of the lady in red had clearly entered Su Tian's ears. Last night, he had also been monitoring the entire room. He did not dare to probe too much. After all, she was his young miss. He did not expect to make such a big mistake. At this moment, Dan Huntian also kicked him. Bang. After being kicked by Pill Soul Sky, Su Tian's figure also flew out. Useless trash. Dan Huntian looked at Su Tian and said slowly. He originally thought that Xiao Changtian and the woman in red had made up. She could bring him to her territory, but she did not expect that the plan she had planned for so long would be ruined. At this moment, Su Tian stood up from the ground without any complaints. He still looked at the Sky of Pill Soul respectfully. Get ready. Follow me to meet that person. At this moment, Pill Soul Heaven was also looking at the direction of the divine world as he slowly said to Su Tian. At the same time in the inn, Lung Mei was in Lung Xiaoxiao's room. At this moment, there were tears in the corners of her eyes. What happened last night was a huge blow to her. Lung Xiaoxiao didn't know what to say. His own sister was actually with another woman in Yihong brothel. At this moment, Lung Mei also slowly said to Lung Xiaoxiao, Sister, if you want to call me your lord, it's all because of that red specter. I don't think she has any good intentions. Lung Xiaoxiao heard Lung Mei's words and comforted her. At this moment, a series of sounds came from Lung Xiaoxiao's room door. Then Lung Xiaoxiao slowly opened the door to her room. Lung Xiaoxiao said with a smile. Senior. Xiao Changtian saw Lung Xiaoxiao. He glanced around the room and found Lung Mei hiding behind. He also slowly said to them, Miss Lung, I feel that we have been out for some time. I will return to the island. Lung Xiaoxiao heard Xiao Changshan's words and said slowly, All right, senior. Xiao Changtian heard Lung Mei's words and left slowly. After what happened last night, Miss Lung Mei really needed a good rest. After Xiao Changtian left, Lung Xiaoxiao looked at Lung Mei and sighed. After Xiao Changtian left, Dan Huntian and Su Tian slowly appeared in the town. Arriving at the small town, Pill Soul Heaven was also the first to arrive at the inn. Upon seeing the red-clothed lady, Dan Huntian slowly said to her, Hongi, grandfather is here. When the red-robed woman saw Dan Huntian also come to his side, she slowly said to him, Grandpa, sob sob sob. He cried in the arms of the Pill Soul Heaven, who patted his back. Grandpa is here. I'll leave the rest to you. You go back first. As he said this, Dan Huntian slowly said to Su Tian behind him, Su Tian, arrange for someone to bring Miss back. Understood. Su Tian responded slowly when he heard Dan Hunshan's words. Following that, under Su Tian's lead, the red-clothed woman also slowly headed towards Treasure Pill Sky. After sending off the red-clothed woman, Su Tian slowly walked in from outside. At this moment, Pill Soul Heaven also took out a bottle of pills from his bosom. Su Tian, think of a way to put this in this village. Don't mess it up this time. Yes. Su Tian responded as he took the jade bottle from Dan Huntian. I won't let you down. Hearing Su Tian's words, Dan Huntian waved his hand at him. This was the poison he had refined when he was in seclusion. This poison did not have much effect on mortals, but it was a fatal threat to powerful people. The stronger one was, the greater the damage one would receive after consuming the poison. According to Dan Huntian's estimation, if Xiao Changtian was a peak immortal emperor, he would probably end up dead. This time I want to see how you're going to break my trap. The woman in red's trap was broken by Changtian. Dan Huntian was not convinced. At this time, Su Tian also poured poison into the town's water source. Chapter 611. There's something wrong with this water. One divine realm, 100,000 mountains. At this moment, on the island of the 100,000 mountains, the great sun immortal was rushing into Xiao Changshan's room. Senior, bad news. Hearing the anxious voice of the great sun immortal, Xiao Changtian slowly walked out of the room. Looking at the great sun immortal in front of him, he said slowly, Taoist Big Sun, what's wrong? The great sun immortal was a little out of breath at this time. He panted and said to Xiao Changtian, Senior, bad news. I wonder what happened in the small town outside the 100,000 mountains? This morning many townspeople were infected with a strange disease. They all said that they were possessed by the 100,000 mountains. Right now many townspeople have come to the 100,000 mountains to pray. Xiao Changtian heard the words of the great sun immortal and hurriedly walked out. Taoist Big Sun, bring me my first aid kit. The great sun immortal looked at Xiao Changtian, who had already run out, and walked into his room. He carried a wooden box out of the room and walked out of the 100,000 mountains. Soon Taoist Big Sun and Xiao Changtian arrived outside the 100,000 mountains. Seeing the townspeople lying on the ground, Xiao Changtian quickly walked to one of the townspeople. Immortal Daong, first aid kit. When the great sun immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he quickly handed the medicine box to Xiao Changtian. Xiao Changtian immediately took out a silver needle from the box. According to the method given to him by the system, he performed acupuncture on the acupuncture points of the townspeople. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As Xiao Changshan's hands landed, he saw that the townspeople's expressions had stabilized. There were no signs of them worsening. Senior, it's done. When the great sun immortal saw that the situation of the townspeople had stabilized, he spoke to Xiao Changtian slowly. Xiao Changtian shook his head when he heard the words of the great sun immortal. No, I just stopped the deterioration of the condition slightly. Then Xiao Changtian seemed to have thought of something and took out a few bottles of medicine from his medical kit. Taoist Big Sun, distribute this to everyone. It can alleviate the illness. Xiao Changtian was holding the antidote pill in his hand. The great sun immortal took the antidote pills from Xiao Changtian and immediately distributed them to everyone. Xiao Changtian looked at the townsfolk in front of him and placed his hand on his wrist. After sensing the situation in his body, he frowned. There didn't seem to be any problems. His vitality didn't drain away. But why did her expression and appearance change so much? Xiao Changtian didn't understand. When he checked the townsman's pulse, he found that there was nothing unusual in this townsman's body. In other words, the internal condition of the townsfolk was no different from that of a normal person. However, there were no abnormalities, but these strange symptoms appeared on his face and body. Then Xiao Changtian took out a needle and touched a strange spot on the townsman's face. There didn't seem to be any problems. Xiao Changtian carefully checked the silver needle in his hand and frowned. These abnormalities, at most, made people feel itchy and powerless. There were no life-threatening injuries. Then Xiao Changtian turned to look at one of the townspeople beside him. She placed her hand on his wrist to feel it. This situation was almost exactly the same as the previous one. At this moment Xiao Changtian said to the crowd, "Everyone, don't be anxious. The disease is harmless. I'll prescribe a few medicines for everyone to take first." Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, the great sun immortal also organized Divine King Red Cloud and the others to come over and help. After a while Xiao Changtian said to the great sun immortal, "Perfected De Yang, follow me to the town to take a look." If he wanted to find a cure, he would have to personally go to the town to investigate. He had just returned from the town and so many people had been poisoned. Xiao Changtian also smelled something unusual when the townspeople were poisoned. Therefore he called the Great Sun Immortal along. After all, if it was really a man's doing, this person's poison was so powerful. If it was an ordinary person, it would be fine. He could still deal with it by himself. However, if one was talented and was an immortal cultivator, he couldn't handle it, but he felt much more at ease with the Great Sun Immortal around. Daoist Dayang nodded at him. Then the two of them slowly ran toward the small town outside the 100,000 mountains. When Xiao Changtian went to the small town, he was in an inn. Dan Huntian slowly sat down on a chair in the room, and Su Tian sat opposite him. Su Tian, how's the situation? Pavilion Master, I have already placed the poison according to your instructions. That person is already on his way to the town. When Su Tian heard Pil Soul Heaven's words, he also responded respectfully to him. Dan Huntian slowly nodded his head when he heard Su Tian's words. Good job. Continue to monitor him and report to me if anything happens. At this moment, Dan Huntian also waved his hand along with Su Tian. When Su Tian heard Pil Soul Heaven's words, he also immediately walked out. You're finally here? Don't disappoint me, the game has just begun. Dan Huntian sat on the chair and muttered. At the same time, Xiao Changtian and the Great Sun Immortal slowly arrived at the town. Due to the disease, the town had become very deserted. It was not as lively as the previous poetry competition. Xiao Changtian looked at the empty street and said to the Great Sun Immortal beside him, Daoist Big Sun, take me to the water source of the town. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he nodded at him. Then he placed his hand on Xiao Changshan's shoulder. With a swoosh, Daoist Big Sun brought Xiao Changtian to a small forest. Xiao Changtian walked forward a few steps and saw a small stream. Then Xiao Changtian also walked toward the source of the upstream. He dipped his hand into the stream and placed it on his tongue to feel it. There was something wrong with the water. Xiao Changtian looked at the water source in front of him and immediately came to a conclusion. Then Xiao Changtian took out a water bottle from his interspatial ring. After taking some water from the stream, Xiao Changtian slowly said to the Great Sun Immortal, Daoist Big Sun, let's go back. With a water source, he only needed to study it for a while. There shouldn't be any major problems. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he also let out a whoosh. He slowly arrived at the inn in the small town. At the same time, Su Tian transmitted his voice to Pil Soul Heaven. Pavilion Master, that person has already drunk the river water and is now in the inn. Chapter 6:12. The poison pill I spended several hundred years of cultivation to refine. 1. Divine Realm, 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian was in his room, and in front of him was a kettle that he had taken from the town. Xiao Changtian continued to study the bottle after he brought it back. At this moment, Xiao Changtian looked at the test tube in his hand and cursed. F***ck, which uncultured person did this? This water is really poisonous. At this moment, the water in the test tube had a faint green color. Obviously, it was this thing that destroyed the citizens. At this moment, the immortal De Yang walked in from outside. Senior, the townspeople aren't that worried anymore. After returning, the Great Sun Immortal went to appease the townspeople. Seeing the arrival of the Great Sun Immortal, Xiao Changtian also said to him, Great Sun Immortal, you came at the right time. There's something I need to trouble you with. This river water is indeed poisonous. I'm afraid that only you can find the culprit. He had also heard from the cultivators that their holy sense could cover a radius of several 111. He could see every movement of the creatures within a few 100 miles. If he wanted to find out who poisoned him, he still had to rely on the immortal of Great Sunday. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he also thought of something. Senior, why don't we treat the townsfolk first, then we'll go over and wait. Xiao Changshan's eyes lit up when he heard the words of the Great Sun Immortal. That's right, we can't alert the enemy now. He didn't know what grudge that person had with this town. Logically speaking, this small town should not be remembered by anyone. They had no money or resources. What good would it do to poison this poor countryside? If a madman were to force him into a corner, he would be driven into a corner. What if he had other poisons in his hands? With this thought in mind, Xiao Changtian said to the Great Sun Immortal slowly, Daoist Big Sun, you're right. Let's start. Okay. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he also responded. After Xiao Changtian studied the poison, he quickly produced the antidote. Therefore, under Xiao Changshan's medicine, most of the townspeople recovered. At the same time, in the inn of the small town, Su Tian rushed in from outside. Pavilion Master, something has happened. Su Tian entered the room and saw Dan Huntian sitting on the seat. He said slowly to him, Pavilion Master, that person's methods are really amazing. I found that the poison in the townspeople seem to have been cured by him. Moreover, he seems to be fine. Hearing Su Tian's words, Dan Huntian's expression changed. Then he closed his eyes tightly, and the true essence in his body surged as he began to sense. In his spiritual world, his connection with the poison was getting weaker and weaker. Some of the poison that had many connections also dissipated. Looks like this person has some ability. I really underestimated him before. That's right. To be able to cultivate to this level, it wouldn't be right if he didn't have some trump cards. At this moment, Dan Huntian also believed that Xiao Changtian had used some trump card. It made his poison ineffective. Su Tian, who was in the room, saw that Dan Huntian was not furious. He said slowly to him, Pavilion Master, what should we do next? When Dan Huntian heard Su Tian's words, he also stood up from his seat. The woman I asked you to control is still here, right? Su Tian's hand gestures also changed when he heard Pil Soul Heaven's words. Pavilion Master, over here. As Su Tian finished speaking, the Flower Fairy's figure slowly appeared in the room of the Pil Soul Sky. When the Pil Soul Heaven saw the Flower Fairy in front of him, a smile appeared on his face. A burst of vital essence surged into his palm, and then a purple pill appeared in his hand. The vital essence in his hand immediately turned into flames, refining the purple pill into threads of vital essence. Then the Jinqi was slowly injected into the Flower Fairy's body. Cough, cough, cough. After doing all this, Dan Huntian also coughed violently a few times. He opened his palm and saw the blood in it. Pavilion Master. Seeing Pil Soul Heaven's appearance, Su Tian also planned to go over and help. Before she could walk over, she saw Pil Soul Heaven reaching out to stop her. Bring this woman to her. I spent hundreds of years of cultivation to condense this poison pill. I'd like to see how he's going to break through this time. Saying so, Dan Huntian also coughed violently a few times. Pavilion Master. Hurry up and do it. Dan Huntian said to Su Tian. Then he walked toward the bed and began to stabilize the restlessness in his body. Su Tian glanced at Dan Huntian, who was sleeping on the bed, and also cupped his fist at him. Yes, Pavilion Master. Then he waved his hand, and with a swoosh, the Flower Fairy's figure followed him. Soon, Su Tian brought the Flower Fairy to the outskirts of the 100,000 Mountains. Seeing that the townspeople outside the 100,000 Mountains had already recovered and left, they also rushed down. Perfected Great Sun, these townspeople have all recovered. Xiao Changtian looked at the townspeople who had recovered and said to the Great Sun Immortal with some satisfaction. Yes, this is all thanks to Senior's miraculous hands. Otherwise, I don't know what to do. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he started to flatter him. This is the result of everyone's hard work. Xiao Changtian replied. He stretched his body and planned to walk into the 100,000 Mountains. Taoist Big Sun, he'll go back and rest first. After he was done, it was time for him to have a good rest. Taoist Daong nodded at him. At the same time, Su Tian, who was standing outside the 100,000 Mountains, saw Xiao Changtian about to enter. The gesture of his right hand immediately changed, and he slowly said to the Flower Fairy beside him, Go and find that person. Then an arrow appeared in Su Tian's hand, and he threw it at Xiao Changtian. Whoosh! The arrow flew in the air and passed by Xiao Changtian. In the end, it stabbed into the stone wall of the 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian was also shocked when he felt the arrow that suddenly flew past him. Who is it? Come out. When the Great Sun Immortal saw the arrows on the stone wall, he became vigilant and looked around. Taoist Big Sun, that person should have run away. Xiao Changtian came to the stone wall and looked at the arrow on the stone wall. There was a trace of green liquid attached to the arrow. It was the poison in the townspeople. Chapter 613. So I've been under his concealment. 1. Divine Realm, outside the 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian looked at the arrow in his hand and said slowly to the Great Sun Immortal beside him, It should be the person who poisoned them. Taoist Big Sun, it seems that this person is very arrogant. We should find him as soon as possible. He had thought that since he had just helped the townspeople detoxify the poison, that person would not have acted so quickly. He didn't expect to provoke her so quickly. There was also the Great Sun Immortal. With the Great Sun Immortal's strength, it should not be a problem for him to subdue that person. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he nodded. It seemed that that person had also provoked Senior. If Senior attacked, would that person still have a way out? At this moment, the Great Sun Immortal also saw a figure walking towards them. Senior, look. The Great Sun Immortal pointed at a figure walking towards them and said to Xiao Changtian slowly. Xiao Changtian heard the words of the Great Sun Immortal and also looked at the direction of his finger. This figure seemed familiar. Xiao Changtian was stunned when the figure approached. Flower Fairy? The Flower Fairy walked in front of Xiao Changtian and the Great Sun Immortal, then fell to the ground with a swoosh. Xiao Changtian and the Great Sun Immortal looked at each other. Then Xiao Changtian saw the Flower Fairy's expression and said to the Great Sun Immortal, Taoist Big Sun, hurry up and send her inside. The Flower Fairy was obviously poisoned. The Great Sun Immortal brought the Flower Fairy to Xiao Changshan's room. At this moment Xiao Changtian also brought a bowl of medicine for her. Even though he had some unpleasant experiences with the Flower Fairy before, he was still very happy. However, doctors were benevolent. After all, the Flower Fairy was a patient. As a doctor he still had to save her. As the Flower Fairy consumed the medicinal soup, her face began to turn rosy. Judging from the Flower Fairy's condition, she should have been poisoned like the townspeople. At the same time Dan Huntian, who was far away in the small town inn, also sneered. If you still think that this virus is the most primitive one, then you're too naive. I spent so much effort to refine this pill. Then how can I face everyone in the future? While speaking, Pill Soul Heaven also changed his hand gestures. My poison can mutate. As Dan Huntian's hand gestures changed, the Great Sun Immortal saw the Flower Fairy on the bed and said to Xiao Changtian slowly, Senior, this flower doesn't seem normal. Look, her complexion seems to have worsened. Hearing the words of the Great Sun Immortal, Xiao Changtian immediately walked over. He frowned when he saw the Flower Fairy's expression. Then he picked up the Flower Fairy's arm and placed his fingers on her wrist. Sensing the changes in the Flower Fairy's body, Xiao Changtian said to the Great Sun Immortal slowly, Taoist Big Sun, please brew a medicine according to the prescription on my table. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he immediately went to do it. With his immortal cultivator skills, the Great Sun Immortal quickly brought Xiao Changtian a bowl of medicinal soup. Senior, what's with the Flower Fairy's illness? When he came to Xiao Changshan's side, the Great Sun Immortal asked him slowly. The Flower Fairy's symptoms were very similar to the other townspeople. However, it had relapsed to this extent. If the other townspeople could do the same, then it would be better for him to let the other townspeople take the medicine as soon as possible. Xiao Changtian also explained to him, the virus in this flower girl's body should have mutated, but it doesn't matter. I'm already prepared. After feeding the Flower Fairy the medicinal soup that the Great Sun Immortal had brought over, the Flower Fairy's expression also began to soften. On the other side, Dan Huntian was sitting on the bed. He opened his eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. How is that possible? In his perception, his virus was slowly being dispelled. One had to know that even he could not immediately concoct the antidote. Perhaps, in a sense, there was no cure for his virus. As long as the poison continued to change, even if that person found an antidote, it would be impossible for him to kill it. After the poison changed, the original antidote would no longer have any effect. But now, an unbelievable scene was happening in his perception. The virus that he had refined in seclusion was actually beginning to dissipate. Could it be that his previous judgment of him was wrong? That person was a poison master? As the Pill Soul Heaven thought of this, his heart also became a little nervous. Then Su Tian walked in from outside. Seeing the somewhat uneasy Dan Huntian, he slowly said to him, Pavilion Master, I've already followed your instructions and handed that woman over to him. I believe that we will soon hear the news of the epidemic in the 100,000 mountains. When Dan Huntian heard Su Tian's words, he said to him, Su Tian, have you ever seen that person personally take action? Su Tian was also stunned when he heard Dan Huntian's sudden question. Pavilion Master, as far as I can remember, that person basically didn't make a move. I was too careless. After getting Su Tian's confirmation, Dan Huntian muttered. It turned out that she had been fooled by his deception all along. That person was able to defeat Wuxia Yuan and the others because he didn't do it himself. If it was a strong person by his side, then this person was very likely to be an alchemist like him. In order to confirm his inner thoughts, Dan Huntian slowly said to Su Tian, Go to his place now, no matter what method you use. You must find out about his cultivation base. At this point, Dan Huntian slowly walked to Su Tian's side and patted his shoulder. Su Tian, I know this mission is a little difficult for you. However, an army is trained for 1,000 days and used for a moment. If anything happens to you, I will make arrangements for your family. When Su Tian heard Pil Sol Heaven's words, his heart was touched too. Then he knelt down in front of the Pil Sol sky. Su Tian's cultivation was given to him by the pavilion master. He was working for the pavilion master. Su Tian is obliged. Seeing Su Tian kneeling on the ground, Dan Hun Tian nodded in satisfaction. All right, hurry up and do it. Su Tian nodded at him when he heard what Dan Hun Tian said. Then, his figure flashed and he flew towards the 100,000 mountains. At the same time in Xiao Changshan's room, the flower fairy on the bed also became more and more ruddy. After a while, the flower fairy slowly opened her tightly shut eyes. Chapter 6:14. The town is safe and sound thanks to Senior's profound cultivation. 1. Divine Realm 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian saw that the flower fairy on the bed had woken up and walked to her bedside. Miss Hua, you're awake. This is a decoction. Take it later. Xiao Changtian turned around and walked out. He didn't even know what his relationship with the flower fairy was like now. If he stayed here he might cause some trouble. The flower fairy looked at Xiao Changtian who was leaving, and her head started to ache. It was as if he had lost an important memory. When Xiao Changtian was helping her to detoxify the poison, he had also removed the purple pill that Su Tian had planted in the flower fairy's body. Seeing the medicinal soup beside her bed, the flower fairy also slowly swallowed it. Bang! Perhaps it was because his body was still relatively weak. The bowl of medicine in the flower fairy's hand fell to the ground and shattered. Hearing the sound of the bowl shattering, Xiao Changtian hurriedly walked in from outside. Looking at the broken pieces on the ground, he heaved a sigh of relief. When the flower fairy saw Xiao Changtian, she said to him slowly, "Senior, I'm sorry." Hearing the flower fairy call him senior again, Xiao Changtian was stunned. Could it be that this flower girl had returned to normal? With this thought in mind, Xiao Changtian slowly said to the flower fairy, "Miss Hua, what did you experience before?" The flower fairy heard Xiao Changshan's words and was about to think of something. However, he realized that his head was aching. Ah! The flower fairy held her head and let out a painful cry. "Miss Hua, what's wrong?" Xiao Changtian saw the flower fairy's painful expression and quickly went over to check. "Senior, I don't seem to remember what happened before." Looking at Xiao Changtian beside her, the flower fairy slowly said to him, "If you can't remember, then don't think about it. You've just recovered, so you should rest more." Xiao Changtian heard the flower fairy's words and understood. Did this flower girl lose her memory? Could it be that he had been poisoned before? Many guesses flashed through Xiao Changshan's mind, but when he saw the flower fairy's weak appearance, he was shocked. He didn't investigate the exact source. It was good that he could recover. As for the root cause, there would be plenty of opportunities to investigate it in the future, right? Xiao Changtian slowly walked out of the room when he saw the flower fairy lying on the bed. He slowly closed the door of the room and saw the immortal De Yang standing behind him. "Senior, someone is looking for you outside." Xiao Changtian heard what the Great Sun Immortal said and said to him, "Is there a new patient?" The Great Sun Immortal shook his head when he heard Xiao Changshan's words. "It doesn't seem like it. I didn't ask him about it, but he said he could only tell me when he saw you." Xiao Changtian was also a little curious after hearing the words of the Grand Sun sect, who insisted on seeing him. He was alone in the cultivation world and had no relatives. No one should have come to visit him. With this thought in mind, Xiao Changtian said to the Great Sun Immortal slowly, "Where is that person now?" "Senior, he's outside the 100,000 mountains. I asked him to come in but he didn't." When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he smiled bitterly. Originally he thought that Xiao Changtian knew the person. It seemed that Senior didn't know that guy at all. With this thought in mind, the Great Sun Immortal said to Xiao Changtian slowly, "Senior, why don't I chase him away?" Xiao Changtian waved his hand at him. "Taoist Big Sun, let's go out and take a look together." Xiao Changtian also wanted to know who this person was. Soon, Taoist Big Sun and Xiao Changtian arrived outside the 100,000 mountains. At this moment, outside the 100,000 mountains, Su Tian was dressed in black. His headscarf fluttered in the wind. When he saw the immortal De Yang and Xiao Changtian walking out of the 100,000 mountains, he was shocked. He was also nervous. "Senior, this is the person who wants to see you." After bringing Xiao Changtian to the 100,000 mountains, the Great Sun Immortal pointed at Su Tian and said to Xiao Changtian. Xiao Changtian looked at Su Tian who was standing outside with a puzzled expression. He did not know this person at all. "Hello, may I know why you're looking for me?" Xiao Changtian came to Su Tian and said slowly. When Su Tian heard Xiao Changtian's voice, beads of sweat began to drip down his forehead. This person must be the one who had repeatedly disrupted the pavilion master's plans. Could it be that he saw through his purpose of coming here and killed him? As he thought about this, Su Tian said to Xiao Changtian, "Senior, I came from a small town. I heard that." He heard that the flower fairy from the small town was here, so he wanted to pay her a visit. At this moment, Su Tian also spoke the words he had prepared beforehand. Hearing Su Tian's words, Xiao Changtian understood. So they were here to look for the flower Jia. I was wondering who would come looking for me. As he thought about this, Xiao Changtian also said to Su Tian slowly, "The flower fairy is weak and has just fallen asleep. Is there anything urgent?" As Xiao Changshan's voice slowly rang in Su Tian's ears, Su Tian felt a wave of nervousness in his heart. What was that? This person was actually having a friendly conversation with him? Didn't he realize that he was the one who controlled the flower fairy when he said that? In order to confirm his inner thoughts, Su Tian also took out a bottle of pills from his pocket. "Senior, I heard that the flower fairy was sick and was quite anxious. This is a pill I found in the town. I hope it can help her." Seeing Xiao Changtian slowly take the pill in his hand, Su Tian was also proud of himself. What he gave him was the purple pill that controlled the flower fairy. If he found out, this person would definitely kill him. Once he made a move, he would also estimate his strength and then pass it on to the pavilion master. If he couldn't see through it, then this person was very likely to be a fox using the tiger's might previously. Xiao Changtian took the pill from Su Tian and frowned after checking it. This seemed to be a type of poison. Why had he never seen it before? Could it be that the person who poisoned them had developed a pill to continue the town? As he thought about this, Xiao Changtian also said to Su Tian slowly, "Thank you. You might have saved the life of a townsfolk." Su Tian was stunned when he heard Xiao Changshan's words. This person really couldn't tell. Could it be that this person was really a fox using the tiger's might? Then Su Tian said to Xiao Changtian, "No, the small town is safe and sound because of Senior's profound cultivation." 1. Chapter 6:15. Is he really immortal? 1. Divine Realm 100,000 Mountains. Xiao Changtian was stunned when he heard Su Tian's words. Then she smiled at him and said, "How am I a cultivator with profound magic power? I'm just a mortal." It seemed that when he saved those townspeople, they all treated him as a cultivator with high cultivation. Although he also wanted it to be true, reality did not allow it. He was still working hard. Su Tian heard Xiao Changshan's words, but he was also somewhat unable to react. Mortals? This person actually said that he was a mortal? Could it be that the pavilion master and he were fighting a mortal? As he thought about this, Su Tian's eyes swept over Xiao Changtian. Because he was afraid of Xiao Changtian, he didn't take a good look at him. After scanning Xiao Changtian, Su Tian was certain that he couldn't sense any aura from him. There were only two possibilities. Either Xiao Changtian was too strong or he was too weak. Judging from the situation just now, this person was really immortal. Xiao Changtian saw Su Tian's shocked expression and continued, "This is perfected de Yang. His cultivation is the highest here." Seeing that this young man was quite enthusiastic, Xiao Changtian still introduced the Great Sun Immortal to him. Perhaps the Great Sun Immortal took a fancy to his aptitude and gave him some guidance. When the Great Sun Immortal heard Xiao Changshan's words, he smiled at Su Tian. Senior really went through the tempering of the heart in the mortal world to the end. He was clearly so strong, but he said that he was immortal in front of everyone. When Su Tian heard this, his gaze swept across the Grand Sun Immortal. Although there was some aura on the Great Sun Immortal's body, it was almost negligible. Su Tian felt that he could subdue him with a casual slap. Then Su Tian smiled at Xiao Changtian and the Great Sun Immortal. "Since the flower fairy is unwell, he'll come back next time." Su Tian cupped his fists at Xiao Changtian and also planned to leave. Xiao Changtian saw that Su Tian wanted to leave, but he did not wave his hand. Then he slowly said to the Great Sun Immortal, "Taoist Big Sun, let's go back too. I think that the poison man is going to make a move soon." Hearing Xiao Changshan's words, the Great Sun Immortal nodded. He looked at Su Tian's back as he left and felt a little strange. But he couldn't tell exactly where it was. Forget it. Since Senior had already let him go, there shouldn't be any problems. After Su Tian left the 100,000 Mountains, he saw that Xiao Changtian and the Great Sun Immortal didn't chase after him. He sneered in his heart and became more and more certain of his thoughts. That was also Su Tian's last test. Even Xiao Changtian and Taoist De Yang were pretending. However, he wouldn't be so foolish as to let his enemy escape. Now that they had not caught up, it meant that they really did not know his identity. He had to quickly inform the pavilion master of this news. With that thought in mind, Su Tian turned into a stream of light and flew towards the town. Soon, Su Tian turned into a stream of light and arrived at the small town. After entering the inn, he immediately headed toward the sky of Pil Sol. Pavilion Master. Dan Huntian was cultivating on his bed. He was stunned when he heard Su Tian's voice. This Su Tian actually managed to escape? Then Dan Huntian slowly said to Su Tian, "Su Tian, how is it? Are you all right?" Su Tian was no longer as nervous as he was when he faced Xiao Changtian. He calmly clasped his fist at the Pil Sol sky in front of him. "Pavilion Master, this subordinate has already come into close contact with that person. That person is immortal." Then Su Tian repeated his conversation with Xiao Changtian to the Pil Sol sky. When the Pil Sol heaven heard Su Tian's words, he also frowned. That didn't make sense. That guy was actually immortal? Based on his understanding of him, that fellow should have started off at the immortal emperor realm. With this thought in mind, Dan Huntian suddenly grabbed Su Tian's arm. His spiritual sense probed into Su Tian's body. "Pavilion Master, what is it?" "What's wrong?" Su Tian asked as Dan Huntian grabbed his arm. When the Pil Sol heaven heard Su Tian's words, he also waved his hand at him at this moment. He had just suspected that Su Tian might have been cast with some kind of spirit technique. However, after scanning his body with his spiritual sense, everything was normal. No, there must be something strange going on. How could that person be immortal? With this thought in mind, Dan Huntian slowly said to Su Tian, "Su Tian, let's go. Take me there." Su Tian nodded at him when he heard what Dan Huntian said. Under Su Tian's lead, Dan Huntian quickly arrived at the periphery of the 100,000 mountains. Looking at the mountain peak that was surrounded by dense fog, Pil Sol Heaven's eyes also flickered. This fog could actually block his detection? Then the sky of Pil Sol's hand gestures changed as well. A towering palm print formed in front of him. He swung his palm at the 100,000 mountains. Dan Huntian also shouted, "Heaven Extermination Seal." The huge palm print carried a huge aura as it attacked the 100,000 mountains. The Pil Sol Heaven looked at the 100,000 mountains in front of it and stared at it too. That palm print just now had condensed at least half of his power. As long as that person made a move, it could be said that Su Tian had already. Thinking of this, the true essence in the Pil Sol Heaven's body also continuously surged. He was ready to kill Su Tian at any time. At the same time, in the 100,000 mountains, Ancestral Dragon was playing in the lake. When he saw the palm print outside, he frowned. Where did this thing come from? It actually dares to attack Master's territory. In the back mountain, the white tiger was also staring at the palm print in the air. He licked his feet. "You still dare to come when you're so noob. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." At various locations on the island, Black Tortoise, Phoenix, Alpha, and the others were also glaring at the palm print. He looked like he was eager to make a move. At this moment, a voice slowly sounded in their ears. "I advise you not to attack. They can't break into this array yet. If you disturb Master, you will be in deep trouble." After the Chaos Ant's voice sounded in the ears of these divine beasts, they also stopped their eager movements. After Xiao Changtian received the pill that Su Tian gave him, he started to study it in his room. If he lost control at this time and disturbed Xiao Changtian, it would not be worth it. At this moment, the palm print slowly landed on the 9 Heavens God Sealing Array. Whoosh! The palm print hit the 9 Heavens God Sealing Array. Then, the 9 Heavens God Sealing Formation emitted a dazzling light. Chapter 6:16. The Might of the 9 Heavens God Sealing Formation. 1. Divine Realm 100,000 Mountains. Pil Sol Heaven stood in the air and looked down at the 100,000 mountains. Seeing the Heaven Extermination Seal slowly land above the island, Dan Huntian said slowly, "If you are immortal, then you shall perish." Whoosh! Then a dazzling white light slowly entered Pil Sol Heaven's eyes. By the time Dan Huntian reacted, he saw that the Heaven Extermination Seal had disappeared. How could his palm print be dissolved? Pil Sol Heaven looked down at the 100,000 mountains and suddenly had a bad feeling. His body flashed, wanting to run outside, but he felt a violent energy fluctuation coming from below. "Pavilion Master, save me." At this time, a cry for help sounded in the Pil Sol Heaven's ears. Dan Huntian turned around and saw Su Tian's body being pulled away by a force. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Then, a burst of rushing wind sound slowly sounded in the ears of Pill Soul Heaven. Pill Soul Sky looked down and saw 9 flags flying toward him. This was a supreme-grade immortal artifact? Pill Soul Heaven's pupils constricted when he saw the 9 flags coming toward him. As for Su Tian, he was surrounded by the 9 flags. Under a wave of strangulation, he did not even have the chance to scream before he was reduced to ashes. At this moment, Dan Hun Tian finally understood why Xiao Chang Tian was so fearless when dealing with him. It turned out that he had a top-grade immortal artifact as a guarantee, and it was 9. With his current strength he could barely deal with one. However, these 9 supreme-grade immortal weapons attacked him at the same time. He had no chance of defeating them at all. With this thought in mind, Pill Soul Heaven also flew out without hesitation. Now he only hoped that the 9 flags would not chase after him. Whoosh! Before he could fly for a distance, he felt a cold wind blowing past him. Layers of ice began to appear on his left arm. Seeing the change in his arm, Pill Soul Heaven hurriedly mobilized the true essence in his body. They gathered at his left arm in an attempt to break the ice seal. Quick, quick, quick! Dan Hun Tian muttered. When the ice layer appeared, he felt the true essence on his left arm stop flowing. It was as if the whole thing was not his. As he flew, he finally broke the ice on his left arm. Pill Soul Heaven saw a red flag appear in front of him. Whoosh! The red flag shone brightly, and the sky of Pill Soul's left arm, which had just recovered, felt a burning sensation. Ah, no. When the sky of Pill Soul sensed the abnormality in his left arm, his entire left arm also started to burn. The true essence in his right hand surged and directly swung towards his left arm. Whoosh! Pill Soul Heaven directly cut off his left arm. Whoosh! 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 The sky of Pill Soul panted heavily, his eyes already filled with fear. That flame just now was a little too terrifying. It was definitely even more ridiculous than an immortal flame like the Hellfire. If he had not cut it in time, his entire body would have been affected. He was afraid that his body and soul had been destroyed. Looking at the surrounding flags that were still swaying, the sky of Pill Soul did not care about the wound on his left arm. He knelt down in the air and said slowly to the 9 flags, "Seniors, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I apologize for my actions just now. Senior, please forgive me." As soon as he finished speaking, Pill Soul Heaven even directly kowtowed a few times. The 9 flags seemed to ignore him. The 9 flags surrounded him in the middle and then began to revolve around him violently. Sensing the violent fluctuations from the 9 flags, Pill Soul Heaven was even more frightened. He had been in the human realm upon heavens for so many years. He did not want to die in such a place. "Senior, I was really wrong. Please let me go. I won't dare to do it again." When he said this, some tears flowed down from Pill Soul Heaven's old eyes. If he knew that Xiao Chang Tian had 9 supreme-grade immortal weapons, he would never dare to provoke him. It was already ridiculous enough for an ordinary person to have one, but there were 9 of them. Wouldn't he be invincible? Moreover, there were 9 items that were related to each other. There was simply no way for him to survive. Dan Hun Tian's voice echoed in the air. The 9 flags continued to revolve around him. Whoosh! The white flag gave off a burst of light, which acted on Dan Hun Tian's body. Then he slowly brought him to the island of the 100,000 mountains. After the 9 flags brought Pill Soul Sky to the island, they returned to their original positions. "Big shots, we did pretty well, right?" The white flag landed on its spot and said slowly to the ancestral dragon and the others. When the ancestral dragon heard the voice transmission of the white flag, he also glanced at him. Why not kill him? This guy actually dared to attack Master. There's no need to keep him alive. Hey, why are you so hot-tempered? I think little white flag did the right thing. This person has repeatedly gone against Master. Isn't it better to let Master deal with him? At this time, Black Tortoise sitting on the fat Rongrong's body also slowly said to Zulong, "You old turtle, you sure have a set of words. I think you'll burn him to death." Phoenix walked out of nowhere. Seeing the scorched left arm of the sky of Pill Soul, it seemed like it wanted to burn the sky of Pill Soul to ashes with endless flames. "Old hen, if you want to fight, you can find me. It's so boring to mess with an old man." At this moment, the divine monkey appeared out of nowhere and looked at Phoenix with a smile. Phoenix flapped her wings after hearing the divine monkey's words. "Damned monkey, if you want to fight, then come. Why should I be afraid of you?" At the same time, Dan Hun Tian, who had fallen on the island, heard the voice transmission between Zulong and the others. His body was already trembling unconsciously. Looking at the divine beasts in front of him, the Pill Soul Heaven could not help but slap himself. After confirming that this was not an illusion, Pill Soul Heaven could not help but shed tears. *CK What kind of person was he going against? There were so many divine beasts. Even if all the people in his entire clan added up, they would not have seen so many. More importantly, these divine beasts seemed to have owners. A person who could tame so many divine beasts was simply a giant, let alone a big shot. At this moment, a voice slowly sounded in Xiao Changshan's room. *CK. Xiao Changtian was holding a book on the 100 methods of medicine and reading the description. He thought that the system would not give him anything good. He didn't expect that the symptoms of the townspeople this time would be recorded on it. If that was the case, why did he have to study it for so long? This damn system was really... Before Xiao Changtian could finish his words, Immortal De Yang walked in from outside. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.